Hey folks, Gary here with Paramount, and I hope everybody out there is having a wonderful Wednesday. Today is October 1st. Speaking of which, tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, we'll be having our live Dangerous Liberty podcast. We're going to be talking about new developments in the Charlie Kirk investigation and many different aspects. And the reason that we have these live is so that you can jump in on the conversation. We want to hear from you. We want to hear your questions. We're going to answer those and your comments. And I think it's been very beneficial to us to hear from the perspective of many viewers, pointing us in different directions, and hopefully we've been a benefit to the people that are talking through some of these things that we're kind of all looking at, dealing with, and everything in between. But I wanted to make this video, folks. I've been thinking a lot about different aspects of this entire tragic event. And I know there's a lot of people out there, and I've been engaged in this as well, trying to figure out how to, and even, you know, there's a debate out there on the mechanism of what took place, and probably most importantly, who's behind it. You know, is this something that is just a product of someone being radicalized through, you know, political ideology, or is there much larger things at play here? And I think all of those are real possibilities, whether we're talking about the U.S. government, Israel, corporate interests. There's a lot of different potential motives that can be easily assigned, and I understand people's confusion. Now, I do think it's extremely important that we find the truth behind Charlie Kirk's murder. Every aspect of it. What happened? Who's responsible? Was there more people involved? Was there larger state-sponsored elements involved? Corporate, all those things. We need to find that truth. There's no doubt about it. But regardless of what we find out, I think ultimately Charlie Kirk's assassination is just a symptom of a much larger, darker problem that we have here in the United States. I was just watching this episode of Joe Rogan, and some of the things that he said and things that were discussed really crystallized this in my mind, and I want to share them with you.
Well, the Charlie Kirk thing opened up my eyes.
Yeah.
I never expected so many people would celebrate that man's murder.
That is evil. That's
bizarre. It's just bizarre. Like normal people that I think they're good people, and they genuinely think that guy was a bad guy. And I don't think they're right, and I think they were indoctrinated. And I don't agree with everything that Charlie Kirk said or did.
I don't care if he was a bad guy or not.
He's not a bad guy.
I don't want to see him. I don't want to see anybody die.
First of all, he's from your age, right?
Yeah.
30,
he's a young guy, right? And he would go around to college campuses and have arguments with people, or have discussions with people, or have debates with people. The fact that people were cheering when he died, normal people, housewives, moms, like people working at banks, people working at various industries, celebrating a man getting shot in front of his kids, in the front of the whole world.
That's
like,
evil.
What is wrong with us?
Yeah, that's evil.
Now, that is one thing that really disturbed me, and quite frankly, I had a huge emotional response to, is right after the death of Charlie Kirk, we had a lot of people out there celebrating. It is shocking to me that we've gotten to a point that we as Americans, and I'm saying the right and the left, we have othered people to the point that we no longer have any human empathy for one another. And I definitely see this more on the left right now. I'm not saying that the right's not guilty of it. I want to talk more about that, but let's finish this out.
I think social media has people completely twisted, and I think a lot of what has people completely twisted is not even organic. I think it's all on purpose, that you're being manipulated by foreign governments, by bot farms, and by various elements, either in our government or other governments. And they do it for their own agenda, for their own ends, and it's dark.
This is exactly right. I don't think we really understand just how much we are being manipulated and dividing this country by, with, and through social media. I think where it's especially underestimated is by people of my generation, right? People that grew up without social media, and now they're adults, they have kids, and so most of who they are was already kind of baked in the cake before they got into social media. Now, don't get me wrong, those people are definitely, we're all being changed by what we see, what we hear on social media. The current population here in the Western world, not just the United States, of 25 and younger, I think the trajectory of who they would be as people has been completely altered and completely changed, and not for the better, because of their constant exposure to social media.
You can't love death. You can't love somebody getting killed.
Right.
That's just, there's the line right there. There's evil and good right there.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's an excellent point right there. You know, right or wrong, good or evil can definitely be subjective. But I think when you find yourself celebrating the death of a person because you disagree with them politically, that's a pretty good place to draw a line and do a little self-assessment and say, hey, you know what, that is evil. And if that is you or that is me, like, we need to self-assess and be like, hey, something is not right here. And I probably have been deceived and or gaslit. And the amount of deception that has been taking place and the mischaracterization of Charlie Kirk even after his death has been mind-boggling to me. And that deception is exactly why otherwise normal people are doing horrific things like celebrating his death. And this is a great example of it right here.
Be clear about who Charlie Kirk was. A man who believed that the Civil Rights Act that granted Black Americans the right to vote was a mistake. His rhetoric and beliefs were ignorant, uneducated, and sought to disenfranchise millions.
If you're gonna call someone else's rhetoric ignorant, shouldn't you make sure your rhetoric isn't ignorant? The Civil Rights Act didn't give Black Americans the right to vote. The 15th Amendment did that a century earlier. Then, the Voting Rights Act in 1965 removed the barriers that states were still using to block Black people. But here's the deeper problem. AOC is attacking a straw man. Straw manning is when you twist someone's argument into a weaker version, then attack that instead of what they actually said. It's a logical fallacy. And it's what caused people to think Charlie Kirk is a racist. Here was his actual point.
You said the Civil Rights Act was a mistake. What did you mean by that?
Yeah, so the parts of the Civil Rights Act were great, but the way it's now being implemented to force men in female bathrooms to push forward of the trans agenda, the intent of the Civil Rights Act is way beyond what it was originally authored for.
But the intent specifically originally was to...
Well, that's interesting. So the intent and the law are two different things. So the intent was noble, which was to say that no American can be not allowed into a place of business based on the color of their skin or their ethnic heritage. Totally agreement with that. That's not what the law only did. It created a massive anti-racist DEI army that then gave us affirmative action.
I could do this all day because Charlie made this argument many times. Charlie supported the Civil Rights Act's intention to protect Black Americans from discrimination. His argument was that the law left loopholes, which are now being twisted to justify men and women's sports or racial discrimination in college admissions. AOC didn't just push this straw man once. She repeated it in emails. She pushed it on social media. You can disagree with Charlie without misrepresenting the past. Lies got him killed. And if this doesn't stop, he won't be the last.
All right, so that's just one example of intentional deception and intentional mischaracterization of Charlie Kirk to gaslight people and to believe in something that's not true. Here is another example, and this is a video that I started seeing being kind of passed around social media right after he was killed. And most of these videos were titled something like, "This is who Charlie Kirk really was," as he talks to an Asian woman in the crowd. And I found this clip especially reprehensible because I watched this debate and this discussion, and I knew exactly who he was talking to in the crowd. But I want you to watch this with the mind of, like a lot of these clips were passed around, he's talking to an Asian woman in the crowd, because that's how this was represented.
You brought it up in context. I'm asking, why don't you live like a socialist? Okay. Go live like a socialist. The point is larger than that, Charlie. I live like a capitalist every single day, Chank. I live as a capitalist, okay? I live when I believe. No. What do? I get charity every single year.
So in those short clips being passed around social media, this is all you see. This is where it ends. And they say, look, he's calling this woman a chink. So they intentionally mischaracterize, number one, that this person is Asian, and they also kind of throw in there that this is a woman. So it feels especially reprehensible to everybody watching this. But let's play the next 10 seconds of this so we can see what really happened.
Hold on. What's my salary? Less than his. Charlie, come on, Chank, let's go. Charlie,
so this is who he's actually talking to. This is not an Asian woman at all. This is a political pundit that is heckling him from the crowd. And who is this person? Well, that's a great question, and he will answer it for himself.
But they're asking, how do I pronounce my name? I'm glad you asked. I want to put this to bed once and for all. And it's really hard, and if you get it wrong, I don't blame you. How are you supposed to know? So that's why I'm telling you. So the first name is Cenk. It's spelled C-E-N-K, but the C in Turkish is pronounced like a J, like Cenk, like short for Jenkins, okay? Cenk. Second name, surname is Uyghur, U-Y-G-U-R, like you, grr.
So if you're not familiar with who this gentleman is, his name is Cenk Uyghur, and he is a well-known Democrat pundit, liberal pundit, whatever you'd like to title him. He's also associated with the Young Turks, along with many other podcasts. He was the one heckling Charlie Kirk from the audience. But that was intentionally turned around and mischaracterized to deceive people, to gaslight people, to try to say he was saying that Charlie was saying chink, and that he was actually referring to an Asian female in the audience. That is not true. That's not what happened. And anyone pushing that should be ashamed. And if you believe that, again, I hope that you're a little bit more discerning, because this is not just happening on the left. This is obviously happening just as much on the right as well. And we as Americans need to come together and realize that. And that's what this discussion is really about, is the fact that we have been being divided as a country for a really long time. And while I was extremely angry after the murder of Charlie Kirk, and I said a couple different things even on our content, like, this is a turning point. We're done playing nice. The left has definitely been using language to describe people on the right as existential threats by the terms of Hitler, Nazi, racist, all of these things. And that, along with an entire generation being indoctrinated and in their entire personality changed by the exposure to social media, is a really bad recipe. And the same thing goes for the right. And my point behind this video is the people on the left and the people on the right, we both see each other as existential threats. But we've been tricked, because that is not the existential threat. We have been divided, and the forces that are trying to convince us that the other side is the threat, that is the real threat, folks. The only reason to divide people, to divide a people, the American people, or any people, is to conquer them. And it's working, because where we're going is a really bad place. And Charlie Kirk's assassination and murder is just a symptom of a much larger, more fatal problem to come down the road, because we're headed in that direction. Whether, there's all this talk about a national divorce, civil war, everything else, we have got to change the way that we view our fellow Americans that we disagree with ideologically. And ironically, the antidote for that is exactly the thing that Charlie Kirk pushed for, and that is freedom of speech, freedom of expression. We've got to get away from the idea that we need to suppress speech that we disagree with. And right now, and this has definitely been an issue on the right as much as it's been the left, but right now, the left is very determined to suppress and label certain speech on the right. And we can't tolerate that as Americans, period. The suppression of speech and even the labeling of certain speech, subjectively calling it hate speech or whatever you want to label it. All of that comes from an insecurity that your ideas lack the compelling merit to overcome the ones that you oppose. That's what it is. And we've seen this throughout history. In the past, this type of opposition speech has been labeled by religious organizations as heresy. And for that, you were imprisoned, you were tortured, you were burnt at the stake. Monarchies labeled ideas like democracy and equality as sedition and treason, for which, again, you were imprisoned, you were tortured, and you were killed in the most horrific ways. But it didn't stop there. At that point, even your generations to come of your family were also labeled and were not allowed to participate in society. Today, what we see is people being silenced, being shamed, being banned from social media, being debanked, and it's all the same thing. Not only is suppression of all speech un-American, morally and ethically wrong, it's never worked. That government or societal suppression is the very thing that guarantees the success of the ideas that they're trying to stop. So again, what I'm looking at is an engineered division in our country. I think it's intentional. I think it's meant to divide us. And I think ultimately it's designed to conquer us both, left, right, whatever division that you want to put us in. And that is another problem that I have with the left is, identity politics. I understand, just like Charlie Kirk said, I think the idea behind it is noble, but I think the outcome is more division amongst fellow Americans. We've got to quit looking at each other through race, through, politics. Like, we can have disagreements, and we need to be able to talk those out and debate it and discuss it and not look at each other as the enemy. We are all Americans. There are definitely some elements of the founding of this country that I understand that people don't find very tasteful. But one thing that has made this country great is the idea of e pluribus unum, out of many one. And that's what we are in this country. We're a melting pot of different races, religions, creeds, politics. But at the end of the day, we're all in this together. And we've stopped looking at each other like that. And we've started looking at our fellow Americans as enemies. And I think we're on a trajectory to where we will be real enemies, and not just a war of words, but an actual war. And I can't think of anything more horrendous than the idea of masses of fellow Americans trying to kill each other. And we gotta right the ship. And even though I felt like the death of Charlie Kirk was some sort of catalyst where, yep, game on, simply based on the motion, I was feeling things and thinking things that I shouldn't, right? That I wouldn't in normal circumstances. So I don't know if we're going to find out exactly what killed Charlie, who was ultimately responsible for it, if the government was involved, if other governments involved. At the end of the day, I think what we need to do is take a look at what Charlie was trying to do, and that was create discourse and respect for one another. Regardless of our differences, we need to be able to respect each other so that we can talk to each other, that we can not, project animus upon each other, right? We can't have a nation like that. A house divided against itself cannot stand. And that has never been more true. And unfortunately, this country, for a lot of different reasons, we're more divided than ever. And we got to start looking at each other as fellow countrymen and start respecting each other again. All right, folks, make sure you join us tonight, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. I don't know. I don't even know if I'll publish this. Maybe this was just me getting some things off my chest. If I do publish this, I hope it helps you. And I'm going to commit, and it's against my nature, I'm going to commit to avoid trying to demonize people that I disagree with, right? I think we all have the best of intentions for this country, and we need to see through all the deception, all the manipulation. Anyways, come join us tonight, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, and every Wednesday. And if this was beneficial to you, like, subscribe, all those things. Until next time, stay armed, stay ready. We'll talk to you soon.